Identical twins share everything that biology can share. The same DNA, the same face, the same fingerprint ridge patterns, though not the same fingerprints exactly, because fingerprint formation is influenced by factors in the womb that are slightly different even for twins. The same genetic inheritance, the same physical blueprint, expressed with the minute variations that separate one person from another, even when they began from the same biological moment. The justice system, as a rule, is not equipped to deal with identical twins. The assumptions it makes about individual identification, that a face is unique, that a DNA profile is singular, that physical description narrows down to one person, do not hold in the same way when two people in the world are genetically and physically near identical. Hassan and Tariq Okafor were 31 years old in April 2013. They were identical twins from Lagos, Nigeria, who had lived in London since their early 20s. They worked in different fields. Hassan as a secondary school PE teacher in Hackney, Tariq as a private security consultant who worked at corporate events and venues across the city. On the evening of April 22, 2013, a robbery occurred at a hotel in Mayfair. The robber was caught on camera. The camera showed a black male in his early 30s, medium height, muscular build, wearing a dark jacket. The image was run through the Metropolitan Police's identification systems. Several witnesses identified the man in the footage as Tariq Okafor. Tariq was not the man in the footage. Hassan was. But this is not the story of how an innocent twin was convicted while a guilty one went free. This is the story of something more complicated, of a twin who was convicted, who maintained his innocence, and who was eventually proved innocent not by proving his brother was guilty, but by proving, through a test so specific that it had never been used in a British court before, that the man in the footage could not have been him. And of what happens to two twins when the justice system cannot tell them apart. Hassan and Tariq Okafor had grown up in the Ikeja district of Lagos, the sons of a bank manager father and a secondary school English teacher mother. They had been born 7 minutes apart, Hassan first, Tariq second, and had spent their entire childhood being mistaken for each other, which they had handled with the equanimity of people who have been managing this since before they could fully articulate it. They had come to London together in 2003 at the age of 21 on student visas. Hassan had studied sports science at the University of East London. Tariq had studied business management at London Metropolitan University. Both had remained after graduation, Hassan qualifying as a PE teacher, Tariq working progressively in private security, eventually running a small team that provided event security for corporate clients in central London. They were close but not inseparable. They lived in different parts of Hackney. They saw each other most weekends. They had different friend groups, different routines, different lives that had grown from the same starting point in different directions. The differences between them were legible to people who knew them well. Tariq had a small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood fall. Hassan had slightly wider shoulders from 20 years of competitive swimming. Their voices, to their close friends, were distinguishable. Their mannerisms were different. Their sense of humor was different. To a CCTV camera in the lobby of a Mayfair hotel, at 10:30 in the evening, these differences were not visible. The robbery at the Mayfair Hotel had involved the theft of a guest's laptop bag from the lobby, a snatch theft, swift and professional, that had lasted approximately 30 seconds. The man had walked in, waited near the reception desk, lifted the bag when the guest briefly turned away, and walked out. He had been calm, practiced, and gone before anyone had reacted. The Metropolitan Police had the footage. They had the description: black male, early 30s, medium height, muscular, dark jacket. They had 6 witnesses who had been in the lobby, and none of whom had a clear look at his face. And they had a facial recognition match, imprecise, flagged as a partial match rather than confirmed, to Tariq Okafor's custody photograph from a minor incident 4 years earlier. Tariq Okafor was arrested on April 28, 2013, 6 days after the hotel robbery. He was brought to a police station in Westminster, questioned for 4 hours, and charged with theft. His alibi for the evening of April 22nd was his brother. He said he had been at Hassan's flat in Hackney from approximately 7 o'clock, watching football with Hassan and 2 friends. Hassan confirmed this. The 2 friends confirmed it. The police noted the alibi and noted that the principal alibi witness, Hassan, was an identical twin who stood to benefit from Tariq's innocence. They did not immediately accept it. Tariq's defense attorney asked the police to look more carefully at Hassan. Hassan's whereabouts for the evening of April 22nd from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock, the window before Tariq had arrived at his flat, were less firmly established. Hassan had been at work until 5:30, had taken the bus home, and had been alone in his flat for approximately 90 minutes before Tariq arrived. The Mayfair Hotel was 45 minutes from Hassan's school by bus. The robbery had occurred at 10:30. The timeline placed Hassan in a position where he could have traveled to Mayfair, committed the robbery, and returned to his flat before Tariq arrived. Tariq's defense attorney laid this out clearly. She said, "My client's identical twin had the opportunity. My client was at his twin's flat at the time of the robbery. The facial recognition match is to my client, but is not confirmed. The CCTV footage cannot, on its own, distinguish between two identical twins." The prosecution's position was that the facial recognition match, combined with Tariq's prior custody photograph being in the system, while Hassan had no criminal record, and therefore no comparison photograph, made Tariq the identified suspect. The alibi was from family members, the twin and two friends who might be motivated to protect him, and was not independently corroborated. The charge proceeded against Tariq. Hassan, for his part, said nothing to the police beyond confirming Tariq's alibi. He did not volunteer where he had been between 5:30 and 7. Nobody asked him directly. Nobody searched his flat. The investigation had its suspect. The trial of Tariq Okafor opened at the Old Bailey in September 2013. It lasted 2 weeks. The prosecution's case rested on the facial recognition partial match, the CCTV footage, and the 6 witness statements from the hotel lobby. No witness had seen the robber's face clearly. All 6 described someone consistent with both twins. The defense made the twin argument directly and forcefully. Tariq's attorney said to the jury, "You are being asked to convict a man of a crime based on CCTV footage and a partial facial recognition match. His identical twin, who is physically indistinguishable from him on any camera, was unaccounted for during the window of the robbery. The prosecution has not investigated the twin. The prosecution has not excluded the twin. You cannot convict on this evidence when there is a person who is physically identical to the defendant who has no established alibi." The prosecution's response was to note that Hassan had no criminal record and no established motive, and that the facial recognition match, even as a partial match, had identified Tariq rather than Hassan. They argued that the twin defense was a reasonable sounding, but ultimately speculative alternative that required the jury to believe the accused was protecting his guilty twin. The jury deliberated for 3 days. They found Tariq guilty. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He was 31 years old. Hassan was in the gallery. He had been there every day. He had watched his innocent brother be convicted of his crime, and he had said nothing, and he had sat there. And this is the thing about this story that I want you to sit with before we go further. Hassan did not immediately confess. He went home. He went to work. He continued his life as a PE teacher in Hackney for 7 more months, while his brother was in prison for what he had done. 7 months. Then something happened that he had not anticipated. What happened in February 2014 was that Hassan Okafor's school held a parents' evening. Hassan was there in his professional capacity, meeting the parents of the students he taught. One of the parents was a man named David Karimi, whose 14-year-old son was in Hassan's Year 10 PE class. David Karimi was a barrister. He had been practicing criminal law for 23 years. He was by reputation someone who paid attention to what people said and what they did not say, and the gap between those two things. David Karimi had been at the Old Bailey in September 2013 on a different case. He had seen Tariq Okafor's trial, not all of it, but enough. He had been struck by the twin defense argument. He had thought it was interesting. He had noted the verdict and moved on to other things. At the parents' evening in February 2014, David Karimi sat across from Hassan Okafor and discussed his son's progress in PE. And at some point in that conversation, he has described it as a moment that did not announce itself, that came from something he cannot fully explain. He looked at Hassan and said something that was not about PE at all. He said, "I saw your brother's trial. I thought the twin defense was compelling. Were you there?" Hassan said, "Yes. I was there every day." David said, "I imagine that was very difficult." There was a pause. David said later that the pause was significant. Not an ordinary conversational pause, but the specific kind of silence that precedes the release of something that has been held too long. Hassan said, "It was me. I need to tell someone." David Karimi did not say anything for a moment. Then he said, "I am going to stop you there. I am a barrister. Before you say anything further, you need a solicitor. Will you let me help you find one tonight?" Hassan said, "Yes." The following morning, Hassan Okafor went to a police station in Hackney and confessed. Hassan's confession was the beginning, not the end, of the legal process to free Tariq. A confession from an identical twin that he was responsible for a crime his brother had been convicted of raised, in itself, legal complexities. The prosecution was cautious. Hassan's confession could theoretically be a fabrication, a twin protecting a guilty brother by claiming responsibility after the fact. The prosecution needed something more than the confession to quash Tariq's conviction. What provided that something was a scientific test that had, at that point, never been used as evidence in a British criminal court. Identical twins share their DNA sequence, their genome, almost perfectly. Standard DNA profiling cannot distinguish between them. But there is a layer above the DNA sequence, the epigenome, that records how genes are expressed over a lifetime. Epigenetic markers are influenced by environment, experience, diet, stress, and behavior. They change over time. And by 2014, researchers at the University of Edinburgh had developed an epigenetic profiling technique that could, in certain circumstances, distinguish between identical twins. Tariq's defense team engaged the Edinburgh researchers. The question was specific. Could epigenetic profiling, applied to biological samples from both twins, produce a differentiated result? And if so, could that result be correlated with the CCTV footage? Specifically, with a partial DNA trace recovered from the stolen laptop bag that had been recovered from a pawn shop 6 months after the theft? The answer was yes. The epigenetic profiles of Hassan and Tariq Okafor were distinguishable. The partial DNA trace from the laptop bag matched Hassan's epigenetic profile and not Tariq's. The Court of Appeal received the confession, the epigenetic analysis, and Dr. Rachel Morrison's expert report explaining the science in June 2014. The court quashed Tariq's conviction in August 2014. He had served 10 months of his 2-year sentence. Hassan pleaded guilty to the theft. He was sentenced to 18 months. He served 9. Tariq Okafor received compensation from the Metropolitan Police and from the British government for his wrongful conviction. He filed civil claims that were settled in 2015. Hassan served 9 months. He was released in March 2015. The brothers have not publicly described what happened when they met after Hassan's release. By all accounts they have met. By all accounts they are still brothers. The specific quality of their relationship now, after Tariq served 10 months for Hassan's crime and Hassan served 9 for confessing to it, is something neither of them has chosen to discuss in public. One thing Tariq has said in one interview is this: "I knew it was him. I think I always knew. The first time I saw the CCTV footage, something in me recognized the way he moved. Not his face. I couldn't tell our faces apart on a CCTV any better than anyone else. Something in how he carried himself. We grew up together for 30 years. You know someone?" He was asked, "Why didn't you say so?" He said, "Because he is my brother." And I was not certain. And saying it, if I was wrong, would have destroyed him. And saying it, if I was right, would have destroyed him. Either way, I said nothing and waited for something else to happen. He paused. Then he said, "Something else happened. It took 10 months. Tariq returned to security consultancy. He no longer works at public venues. The experience of having his face identified on a CCTV has, he says, made him prefer contexts where cameras are not a factor. He manages the behind-the-scenes logistics of corporate events now, a role that is equally professional and less visible." Hassan returned to teaching after his release. His school kept his position open. The parents' evening where he confessed is now a story told quietly among the parents who knew about it. A story about a barrister who noticed something and asked the right question and changed everything because of it. The case of Tariq and Hassan Okafor produced, in 2015, a Metropolitan Police review of its facial recognition practices for cases involving identical twins. The review recommended enhanced protocols, specifically, that in any case where facial recognition produces a match and an identical twin exists, epigenetic profiling should be considered before charge. The epigenetic profiling technique used by the Edinburgh team has since been accepted as admissible expert evidence in 4 subsequent British criminal cases, none involving twins, but all involving situations where standard DNA profiling was insufficient to distinguish between close relatives who were potential suspects. David Karimi, the barrister whose conversation at a parents' evening had produced the confession, was asked about his role in the case. He said, "I asked a question. Hassan answered it. What happened next was his choice. I just asked a question. He was asked, why that question? He said, 23 years of watching people in courtrooms. You develop a sense for the thing that isn't there. What wasn't there, when I looked at Hassan Okafor across that table and thought about his brother's trial, was the expression of a man whose twin has been wrongly convicted. What was there was the expression of a man carrying something. He said, I have been wrong about these things before, but I asked anyway. This is the thing about wrongful convictions that this channel keeps returning to. They are corrected not always by the grand mechanisms of science and law, though science and law played crucial roles in Tariq's case, but by the accumulation of small human attentions. A barrister noticing an expression at a parent's evening. A librarian reading a file on a Tuesday afternoon. A retired detective whose conscience finally found its voice. An academic reading a journal paper about chlorite. Justice is not a system. It is the sum of the moments when individuals choose to look carefully and ask the uncomfortable question and follow where it leads. Tariq Okafor is 42 years old. He lives in London. He has a daughter who was born in 2016, 2 years after his exoneration. He has said that he does not think about the 10 months very often, not because they don't matter, but because his daughter is more interesting. Hassan Okafor is also 42 years old. He teaches PE in Hackney. His students, most of them, know nothing about any of this. David Karimi is still a barrister. He still attends parents' evenings. He still asks questions.